What if I told you that, in a single breath, life as you know it could end? That one moment you're living your ordinary routine, and the next, you're standing face to face with eternity? I died. And in that moment, Jesus himself appeared to me. His words pierced my soul. Humanity is not prepared. Then, he showed me a terrifying vision, a coming global blackout, 72 hours of darkness that will shake the entire world. And time, my friend, is running out. My name is Elena Marquez. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Seville, Spain. On the surface, I looked like an ordinary woman, chasing ordinary dreams. I worked as a school teacher, guiding children through history, literature, and the mysteries of the human spirit. Every morning, I walked through narrow streets filled with orange blossoms, greeting neighbors, sipping coffee at the same corner cafe. My life was simple, and perhaps from the outside, even beautiful. But what no one truly saw was the quiet war inside me. For years, I carried unanswered questions. Questions that sometimes haunted me late at night when the world was silent. What happens when we die? Is God real? Am I living the life I was meant to live? Or just existing until my time runs out? I was raised Catholic, surrounded by candles, saints, and whispered prayers. Yet as adulthood unfolded, faith felt like a fragile thread slipping through my fingers. I prayed less. I worked more. I filled my evenings with distractions, Netflix, social media, endless scrolling. Deep down, I felt restless, as if a storm was building somewhere I couldn't see. I often thought, if Jesus truly walked the earth, if he truly is alive, what would he say to me now? Little did I know, I was about to find out. It happened on a Thursday, a day I thought would be like any other. I kissed my mother on the cheek, sent a quick message to my sister, and prepared my lesson plans for the next day. I had no idea that this ordinary Thursday would become the dividing line of my life, before and after. That evening, as the sun set golden over the rooftops of Seville, I left my apartment for a short drive. I remember glancing at the sky, thinking how peaceful it looked, the way the clouds were painted with pink and fire. I felt a tug in my chest, a strange heaviness, as if something was about to happen. I brushed it off, but destiny had already been written. Within minutes, my world shattered. Metal against metal, a violent crash, glass exploding like thousands of stars, my body thrown into weightlessness, and then silence. The silence of death. At least, that's what I thought, because the very next breath I took was not in this world, and in that moment, I discovered something so shocking, so urgent, that I cannot stay silent. Humanity is on the edge of something unimaginable. A darkness is coming, a blackout of 72 hours that will cover the earth. I saw it. I lived it. And I was sent back to warn you. But before I share what Jesus told me, I need to take you into the heart of that moment, my crossing over, the encounter, and the message that burned into my soul. Now I ask you, before we continue, if today was your last day on earth, are you truly prepared to face eternity? Write your answer in the comments. I want to know how you feel about this question. The ordinary life that hid an invisible hunger. Before the night of my death, my life looked normal, maybe even enviable. I had a stable career as a teacher, colleagues who respected me, and a close-knit family who loved me dearly. My father had passed years earlier, but my mother remained the quiet anchor of our family, her hands always busy with cooking, her voice always soft in prayer. My younger sister, Isabella, was my best friend, the one person I could laugh and cry with in the same breath. To most, I seemed fulfilled. A woman with a good job, a small apartment in Seville's old town, and the promise of a steady future. But inside, I was restless. Something was missing, though I couldn't name it. Every morning, I stood before a classroom full of curious faces, teaching them about past civilizations, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans. I told them how empires rose and fell, how kings built palaces, how wars reshaped history. And yet, in the quiet moments, I often wondered, what will be said of us? What will be said of me? When my story ends, will it matter that I was here? Despite my questions, I pushed on. My days were filled with lesson plans, errands, cooking, and caring for my family. In the evenings, I scrolled endlessly through social media, comparing my life to others, wondering why happiness always seemed brighter in someone else's photos. There were moments when God tugged at my heart. I remember walking past a small church one night, hearing hymns spill into the street. My steps slowed. I wanted to go in. I wanted to believe again the way I did as a child, when prayers felt alive, when miracles seemed possible. But I kept walking, convincing myself I didn't have time. The truth? I was afraid. Afraid of silence. Afraid of facing my doubts. Afraid that maybe I was too far from God to ever return. Still, life went on. Birthdays, family dinners, long conversations with Isabella about dreams and fears. She wanted to travel the world. I wanted to. I didn't know. I only knew that I longed for something more than routine. Looking back now, I see the signs, the restlessness, the unanswered prayers, the way my heart ached when I thought about eternity. It was as if heaven itself was whispering to me, "Prepare. Something is coming." But I didn't listen. I drowned out the whispers with busyness, with screens, with noise. And then came the night, the accident, the moment everything stopped. I often think, if I had died permanently that night, if I had never returned, what would my legacy have been? A handful of memories, a few photos on my family's shelves, a teacher remembered by her students for stories of history. But eternity? I wasn't ready. Not even close. And that is why my story matters. Because I am not the only one. Millions live exactly as I did, smiling on the outside, but spiritually unprepared inside. And when Jesus looked into my eyes during my NDE, his words pierced me. Humanity is not prepared. That truth began long before my accident. It began in the emptiness I carried every day without even realizing it. So I ask you, be honest. Do you ever feel like something is missing, even when life looks fine from the outside? Write your answer in the comments. You may discover you are not alone in that feeling. The day everything changed, it was an ordinary Thursday. At least, that's what I believed when I woke up that morning. The sunlight slipped through the shutters, warming the tiled floor of my small apartment. I made coffee, scribbled last-minute notes for my class, and checked my phone. A few messages from friends, a short reminder from my mother to stop by that weekend, and a voice note from Isabella making me laugh about something silly she'd seen online. Nothing unusual, just life. I remember standing by my window, looking at the world outside. Children in uniforms heading to school. A man selling bread on his cart. The air was alive with everyday sounds. The hum of cars, footsteps echoing down narrow streets, laughter carried on the wind. But as I leaned against the window frame, a strange heaviness settled in my chest. A whisper of unease I couldn't explain. It felt like a shadow brushing against my soul. I shook it off, convincing myself I was just tired. After all, it was only another day. That evening, I decided to take a short drive outside the city. Nothing complicated, just a moment to clear my mind, maybe to enjoy the last glow of the sun as it melted into the horizon. The streets glowed golden, the sky painted in streaks of orange and rose. I turned on the radio, humming softly to a familiar song, and then everything shifted. I was driving along a narrow road when, out of nowhere, headlights blinded me. A car swerved across the lane. I had no time to react. The world exploded. The screech of tires, the deafening crash of metal against metal, the shattering of glass, like stars bursting into the air. My body lurched forward, restrained and yet weightless, pain tearing through me in a way words can barely describe. Time slowed. I remember the taste of blood in my mouth, the sharp sting in my chest, the terrifying sound of my own heartbeat, faster, weaker, fading. My vision blurred, colors swirling into darkness. I could hear faint voices, people screaming, someone calling for help, but their words felt distant, like echoes from another world. And then, silence. The kind of silence that doesn't belong to this world. For a moment, I thought, this is it. This is death. I expected fear. I expected horror. Instead, I felt something else, a strange release, as if the weight of my body no longer held me down. I tried to open my eyes, but realized my body was still there, motionless, crushed inside the wreckage, yet somehow I was not. I hovered, weightless, above the scene. I could see the twisted metal, the flashing lights of an ambulance rushing closer, the faces of strangers peering into my broken car. I could see myself, pale, lifeless, blood on my face, and in that moment, reality shattered. Death was not the end. I was fully aware, more alive than I had ever been. My senses sharpened, every detail brighter, clearer. The fear of dying melted away, replaced by something indescribable, peace. But this peace was only the beginning, because what came next would shake me to my core, a blinding light, a presence so holy and overwhelming that words still fail me, and a voice, the The moment Jesus spoke to me, eternity opened before my eyes. Before I share his words, I want to ask you, have you ever had a close call, an accident, a moment you thought would be your last? What did it make you realize about life? Share your story in the comments. Leaving the body behind. I hovered above the wreckage, staring at a scene that should have broken me with terror. Yet instead, I felt strangely detached, almost weightless. Below me lay my body, motionless, pale, covered in shards of glass. Strangers were rushing around, some shouting, others dialing emergency numbers. I could hear their words, but they echoed as if carried on water, muffled, distant, unreal. It took me a moment to grasp the impossible truth. I was outside of myself. The pain that had consumed me seconds earlier was gone. My chest no longer burned. My lungs no longer struggled for air. Instead, I felt free. The best way I can describe it is like stepping out of heavy clothing you didn't realize you were wearing. For the first time in my life, I was not weighed down. My spirit floated, unchained from flesh, every sense magnified. I could see the smallest details, the texture of the asphalt, the faint glow of the street lamps, even the tears in the eyes of a woman who had stopped her car to help. But I also sensed something deeper. Their thoughts, their fear, their prayers whispered under breath. I wasn't just observing. I was aware in a way that transcended language. And then came the most surreal realization. There was no fear. The moment I understood I was dead, I expected to panic. I thought I'd scream, fight, cling to life. But instead, peace flooded me. A peace so profound that it defies words. It was as if every burden I had ever carried, every doubt, every worry, every regret, had been lifted from me in an instant. Time no longer moved the way it did on Earth. Seconds stretched into eternity. I was both present in the chaos of the accident scene and simultaneously being drawn away from it. At first, I resisted. I looked down at my body and thought of my mother, my sister Isabella. I felt a pull of sorrow, the thought of leaving them behind. But even that sorrow seemed wrapped in love, not despair. I knew somehow they would be cared for. Then I noticed something extraordinary, a glow in the distance. Not the harsh glare of headlights or ambulance lights, but a soft, living light. It shimmered, calling me, radiating warmth. The closer it came, the stronger the peace became. It was like a gentle hand reaching for me, urging me to let go of Earth and step into something greater. And so, I drifted. The sounds of sirens, the cries of people, the broken shell of my body, all of it faded as the light grew brighter. My surroundings shifted. What once was a dark road now began to dissolve into brilliance. I wasn't alone. I felt a presence. Not just any presence. This was holy, overwhelming, alive. The very air seemed saturated with love, a love so intense it made every human love I had ever known feel like a shadow. I knew. Without anyone telling me, without needing proof, I knew I was approaching eternity, and waiting in that eternity was someone I could never have imagined seeing so soon. Tell me, have you ever had a dream, a vision, or even a strange feeling that you were outside your body? Do you believe the spirit exists beyond death? Share in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. The embrace of the light. As I drifted farther from the broken road and the shell of my body, the light grew stronger, brighter, more alive. It was not like earthly light. It didn't hurt my eyes. It didn't blind me. Instead, it poured into me, filling every empty place inside my soul. Imagine the warmth of the sun on your face after a cold night. Multiply that by 1,000, then add a love so deep it makes your heart ache with joy. That is what this light felt like. It wasn't just something I saw. It was something I knew. It wrapped around me. It entered me. It became part of me. I realized something startling. The light was aware of me. It knew me. Not just my name or my story, but every thought I had ever had, every hidden wound, every regret I carried. And yet, instead of judgment, it responded with love. For the first time in my life, I felt completely understood, completely seen, completely accepted. I tried to remember the crash, the pain, the world I had left behind. But in the presence of this light, those memories seemed like distant shadows. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't confused. I wasn't even asking questions. I simply was. And being in this light was enough. Then something extraordinary happened. I began to hear. Not with my ears, but with my soul. The light had a sound, a vibration, like a chorus, thousands of voices woven together in harmony, singing without words. It felt like creation itself was praising. I can't describe it except to say it was the music of heaven. As I was immersed in this living radiance, I became aware that I was not alone. Shapes began to form within the light, gentle figures, radiant and calm. I sensed them as beings of love, guardians, messengers. They did not speak, yet they communicated clearly. Welcome. You are safe. You are loved. One of them reached out, not with a hand as we know it, but with an energy that touched the very core of who I was. In that instant, I saw my entire life play before me, like a river of memories, flowing in an instant. Childhood laughter, arguments with my sister, nights of loneliness, students whose lives I touched without realizing. Every choice, every word, every moment. But here was the miracle. I was not condemned. Even in the moments I was ashamed of, there was no accusation. Instead, I felt waves of compassion, as if heaven itself was saying, yes, we see it all, and still, you are loved. The figure slowly stepped aside, and the light grew even more intense, more personal, more holy. My heart trembled. Somehow I knew someone greater was approaching, and then I felt it. A presence so powerful, so pure, that the very essence of who I was bowed in awe. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The air itself seemed to worship. The light shifted, concentrating into one form. My soul whispered what my lips could not. Jesus. He was coming. Let me ask you, if you had the chance to stand in the presence of pure love, would you run toward it, or would you be afraid? Write in the comments. I want to hear your honest reaction, face to face with Jesus. The light intensified until it was no longer just radiance. It was a person. Out of the brilliance stepped Jesus. I had seen paintings and statues all my life, but nothing on earth could capture him. His presence was overwhelming, yet tender. His face shone with a beauty that words cannot contain. Not just physical beauty, but the beauty of truth, purity, and infinite love. His eyes, oh, his eyes! They were like oceans of fire and mercy, burning with knowledge of everything I was, yet filled with compassion so deep I could barely withstand it. The moment his gaze met mine, I felt stripped bare. Every secret, every doubt, every sin, he knew it all. And yet, instead of turning away, his eyes drew me closer. In his presence, shame dissolved. Fear vanished. I was home. He did not move his lips, yet his voice filled me, like thunder and a whisper all at once, echoing through my soul. Elena, he said, calling me by name, though I had never spoken it. You are here because my love has never left you. At that instant, I fell, not with my body, but with my spirit, before him. If I had been capable of crying, I would have. The weight of his holiness was too much to stand under, yet he lifted me, not with hands, but with love, raising me into his gaze again. Then came the words that pierced me like a sword. Humanity is not prepared. I trembled. His voice was not angry, but urgent, heavy with sorrow. As he spoke, I saw visions flashing before me. Cities in darkness, people screaming in confusion, the earth trembling as if creation itself groaned. 3 days, he said. 72 hours of darkness will cover the earth. A global blackout. Fear will grip the hearts of many. The world will not be ready. I wanted to speak, to ask, when, how, but my words melted in his presence. He continued, tell them, warn them, not to fear the darkness, but to prepare their hearts. Because what matters is not the power that fails on earth, but the light that must shine within. Tears of the soul burned in me. I wanted to stay with him forever, bathed in his presence. Yet at the same time, I felt the weight of his command. It was not just a vision for me, it was a message for all humanity. Then he reached out. His hand, scarred, radiant, touched me. The moment his light entered me, I felt every wound inside me healed. Every question I had carried in life suddenly found its answer. He was the answer. Not religion, not ritual, not knowledge, just him. Still, the sorrow in his voice lingered. I could sense his heart breaking for humanity, so distracted, so divided, so blind to what is coming. His love was infinite, but his warning was urgent. Elena, he said once more, his eyes holding mine, go back. Tell them what you have seen. Speak the truth, even if they do not believe. Time is shorter than they realize. In that instant, I knew my mission. And I want to ask you now, if Jesus himself appeared to you and told you humanity is not prepared, how would you respond? Would you change something in your life today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The message of warning. When Jesus spoke the words, "Humanity is not prepared," I felt them echo through eternity. They were not just spoken to me, they were spoken to all of us. Then he opened my eyes to a vision. The radiant light around him shifted, and suddenly I was watching the earth from above. Darkness spread like ink poured into water, swallowing cities, nations, entire continents. I saw the lights of homes, streets, and skyscrapers flicker out one by one until the globe was covered in shadow. It was not just the absence of electricity. It was as if creation itself had fallen silent. The sun, the moon, the stars, gone. A heavy, suffocating blackness settled over the earth, lasting not for minutes or hours, but for 3 entire days. 72 hours of fear. I heard cries rising from the cities, people stumbling in confusion. Some screamed, others prayed, many cursed. Families huddled together in terror, unsure if the world had ended. I could feel their fear, taste it, as if the whole planet was drowning in despair. Yet amidst the panic, I also saw small pockets of light, not from lamps or candles, but from within. Homes where people prayed, their hearts shining like beacons. I understood then, the true light was not outside, but inside. Jesus' voice filled me again. Many will be afraid, but fear is not from me. Tell them to prepare their hearts, not their cupboards. Tell them the greatest darkness is not what surrounds them, but what they allow within. Those who cling to me will be safe. I wanted to ask him, when will this happen? Will it be in my lifetime? But he did not give me a date. Instead, he gave me understanding. The warning was not about predicting a day, it was about awakening now. In the vision, I saw governments scrambling, unable to explain the blackout. Technology failed. Satellites went blind. The world's greatest powers were as helpless as children. Humanity's illusions of control crumbled in the face of something far greater. And yet, in the silence of the darkness, something holy stirred. People who had forgotten prayer remembered it. Neighbors shared what little they had. Families that were broken found themselves clinging to one another. And in that silence, some finally heard the whisper of God. Jesus' words burned in me. This darkness will test hearts. Some will curse it. Others will awaken through it. My children must not fear. They must be ready. The vision faded, and once again I stood before him. His gaze was steady, his love unshaken, but the urgency remained. "Elena," he said, "do not keep silent. Speak, even if they laugh, even if they doubt. Tell them I am real. Tell them my coming is near. And tell them the time is short." I trembled. Part of me wanted to stay in his presence forever, but part of me knew I could not. My task was clear. I had been given a glimpse of what is coming, not to frighten, but to awaken. And now I ask you, listening to my story, if 3 days of darkness came tomorrow, would you be ready in your heart? Where would your hope rest? In candles and batteries, or in the one who is the light of the world? Write your answer in the comments. The prophetic vision in detail. The vision deepened. It was no longer just glimpses of cities and nations in shadow. I was inside the experience. I could feel the terror of the world as if it were my own. The first day of darkness began suddenly. The sun vanished at midday, swallowed by an unnatural blackness. The world froze in disbelief. Airplanes grounded, cars stalled, electricity grids failed. Every screen went blank. No phones, no news, no connection. Silence fell, broken only by the cries of confusion and fear. I saw homes where people scrambled for candles, matches, flashlights, desperate for light that would not last. Governments declared emergencies. Leaders begged for calm, but their words carried no power. Humanity, so proud of its technology and progress, was helpless in the face of something no science could explain. On the second day, the panic grew darker. Fear turned to violence in some places. I saw looting, fighting, neighbors turning against one another. Some surrendered to despair, believing the world had ended. Others mocked, saying, "Where is God now?" The darkness revealed the true condition of hearts, not just around me, but everywhere. And yet, I also saw a different picture. In scattered places, small groups gathered to pray. Families lit candles not out of fear, but as symbols of faith. Children's voices whispered the Lord's Prayer in trembling sincerity. These homes shone like stars in the midst of endless night. Then came the third day. By then, silence spread across the earth. People were exhausted from fear, from crying, from waiting, and in that silence, I sensed something holy. It was as if God Himself was listening to the cries, the prayers, the decisions being made in hearts. Some, in their despair, opened themselves to His presence for the first time. Others hardened, refusing even then to bow. Through it all, I felt Jesus beside me, His voice steady. This darkness will separate, it will reveal, it will purify. Many think they have time, but the hour is late. Those who trust in me will shine. Those who do not will stumble. The vision shifted again. I saw beyond the 3 days. The light of the sun returned, but the world was not the same. People emerged from their homes forever changed. Some had a newfound faith, their eyes opened to what truly matters. Others were bitter, hardened, more blind than before. The darkness had not only tested the earth, it had sifted it. I trembled as I watched. It was not just an event of nature. It was a spiritual unveiling, a shaking of humanity. The question was not whether the darkness would come. The question was, who will you be when it does? When the vision ended, I was back before Jesus. His gaze pierced me with both love and urgency. "Elena," He said, "remember this. I am the light, and the darkness cannot overcome me. Tell them not to cling to fear. Tell them to cling to me." Those words burned into my soul. I knew then that this was not a story to keep hidden. It was a message meant to shake the sleepers awake. Now I turn to you. If the world were stripped of every light, every comfort, every distraction for 3 days, what would remain inside you? Would you find fear or faith? Write your answer in the comments, because your reflection may inspire someone else. The return to the body I wanted to stay. Every part of me longed to remain in that radiant presence, wrapped in the peace of eternity, hearing the heartbeat of heaven. In the light of Jesus, there was no sorrow, no fear, no longing, only completion. But His words lingered inside me. Go back. Tell them. Humanity is not prepared. I knew what He meant, but I resisted. I pleaded silently. Please, let me stay with you. Don't send me back to the pain, the brokenness, the noise of the world. For a moment I felt His compassion, as if He understood my struggle. But then His gaze grew firm, and with love and authority, He released me. The light began to fade, the voices of heaven softened, and I felt myself being pulled backward, falling, sinking, into weight. And then it happened. The peace of eternity was ripped away by agony. My body, crushed and broken from the accident, became my prison once again. My chest convulsed. My lungs screamed for air. Pain seared through me in waves so sharp I thought I would lose my mind. I heard voices, urgent, panicked, paramedics shouting, sirens wailing, hands pressing against my chest, a mask forcing air into my lungs. The world was chaos, bright lights flashing, people crying out. I wanted to scream. I've seen Him. I know the truth, but my mouth couldn't form the words. All I could do was weep inwardly, knowing I had returned for a purpose greater than myself. The days that followed were a blur of hospitals, surgeries, and restless nights. I drifted between waking and dreams, but the memory of Jesus was stronger than the drugs in my veins. His words played over and over. Humanity is not prepared. 72 hours of darkness are coming. At first, I told no one. Who would believe me? Even I struggled to believe I was alive. My body was weak, scarred, heavy with pain, but my spirit burned with fire. One night, as I lay in my hospital bed, I felt His presence near me again, not in the overwhelming brilliance of before, but in a gentle whisper that stirred my soul. You must speak. I knew then that silence was no longer an option. My life had been given back to me, not for comfort, but for mission. I was no longer just Elena, the schoolteacher from Seville. I was a witness, and yet the weight was heavy. How could I carry such a message? How could I stand before the world and say, I died, I met Jesus, and He warned me about 3 days of darkness? Wouldn't they call me crazy? Wouldn't they laugh? But then I remembered His eyes, the way He looked at me, full of truth and love. That memory alone gave me strength. His words mattered more than the world's opinion. So I decided, even if my voice trembles, even if my story is mocked, I will share it. Because the pain of disbelief is nothing compared to the tragedy of silence. And now I ask you, if you were given a second chance at life, and you knew it was to carry a message from heaven, would you have the courage to share it, even if no one believed you? Write your answer in the comments. When I left the hospital, I stepped into a world that felt both familiar and foreign. The streets of Seville were the same, the voices of neighbors, the smell of bread and coffee in the morning. But I was no longer the same. Once you have stood before Jesus, once you have felt eternity, life on earth can never look ordinary again. I carried with me two things that burned in my soul: the overwhelming love of Christ and his urgent warning. Humanity is not prepared. 72 hours of darkness will come. For weeks I struggled. Should I tell anyone? Should I bury it in my heart and move on with life? Fear whispered, "They will laugh. They will call you crazy." But love whispered louder, "This is not about you. This is about them." So here I am, speaking to you, not as a preacher, not as a saint, just as Elena, a woman who tasted death, who met the Savior, and who cannot keep silent. Listen carefully. The warning I received was not given to inspire terror. Jesus does not use fear to enslave. He uses truth to set free. The darkness I saw was real, but the greater truth is this: no darkness, no matter how thick, can extinguish the light of Christ. The question is not if the blackout comes. The question is, are you ready? Not ready with candles, batteries, or food supplies, though wisdom is not wrong. I'm talking about the readiness of your heart. Because when everything else fails, when governments are powerless, when technology collapses, when the world trembles, the only true refuge is Him, and He loves you. The same eyes that looked into my soul with compassion are the same eyes that look upon you now. He knows your fears, your doubts, your mistakes, and He still calls you His. My life was given back to me not so I could chase comfort, but so I could tell you this: there is hope, there is light, there is salvation, and His name is Jesus. So what will you do with this message? Will you dismiss it as a dream, a story, an invention of the mind? Or will you let it stir something deeper, a hunger, a longing, an urgency? Because time is shorter than we realize. I want you to stop for a moment and reflect. If the world went dark for 72 hours starting tonight, would you have peace in your heart or fear? Write your honest answer in the comments below. And if you believe this message needs to reach more people, share it. Let it awaken others the way Jesus awakened me. Finally, if you want to walk this journey of truth, of hope, of preparation together, subscribe. Not because of me, but because this is bigger than all of us. Together we can remind the world that the light still shines, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is my mission now, and I invite you to join me.